In the quiet halls of Mercy General, 68-year-old volunteer nurse Clara Wilson saw something in comatose 16-year-old Jake that the EEG machines missed. A mother's love wasn't the only force fighting to bring him back. The fluorescent lights of Mercy General's long-term care unit hummed their eternal hymn as Clara Wilson adjusted the floral scarf around her silver curls. At 68, her hands once steady enough to start EVs in moving ambulances now trembled slightly as she smoothed young Jake Peterson's bedsheets. The 16-year-old had lain motionless for 6 months since the car accident that claimed his mother's life and left him in a persistent vegetative state. According to his charts. "Good morning, sweetheart," Clara murmured, her Tennessee accent softening the clinical silence. She'd volunteered to bathe Jake every morning since his wealthy father had transferred him here from the city hospital. Harrison Peterson sat and visited precisely once a week, his Italian loafers clicking against linoleum as he stared at his son like a failed business venture. As Clara washed Jake's face with lavender-scented cloths, her own grandmother's remedy, she noticed his eyelids flutter. Not the random twitches documented in his chart, but purposeful movements synchronized with her humming. Her breath caught when his index finger twitched against her palm as she massaged his hand. "Nurse Wilson," Dr. Reynolds' sharp voice made her jump. The neurologist stood in the doorway, tablet in hand. "I've told you before, those folk remedies are inappropriate. This patient shows no cortical activity on his latest scans." Clara positioned herself between the doctor and Jake. "With respect, doctor, I've cared for coma patients 30 years. There is awareness here." Reynolds sighed. "Hope can be cruel, Clara. Mr. Peterson is signing the dear paperwork today." When the doctor left, Clara leaned close to Jake's ear, her voice fierce. "Don't you listen to them, sugar. Your mama is watching. And so am I." Beneath the heart monitor's steady beeps, she swore she heard his breathing change. Clara clocked out at 7 p.m. but didn't leave. Instead, she slipped into the hospital chapel, its stained glass casting jeweled shadows across her wrinkled hands. "Lord," she whispered, "if there is even a spark left in that boy." Her prayer dissolved into silence. At midnight, she returned to Jake's room with her old nursing bag. The security guard, a former patient she'd attended through chemo, nodded her through. Under the glow of her pocket flashlight, Clara began her forbidden assessment. "Squeeze once for yes, twice for no," she murmured, enclosing Jake's hand in hers. When she asked if he could hear her, his thumb pressed against her palm once. Tears blurred her vision as she tested each limb, documenting subtle responses the daytime staff had missed. "His pupils are tracking," she whispered excitedly to Ethel, the night nurse who'd been her protege in the 90s. "Not randomly, they follow my penlight in smooth arcs." Ethel checked the hall before speaking. "Clara, Harrison Peterson is flying in a specialist tomorrow to evaluate for organ donation. They recalling it." Clara's spine straightened. "Not while I am breathing. Where is that boy's chart?" Together, the women pored over months of data. "Look here," Clara pointed. "Every Tuesday at 2 a spike in heart rate, and his cortisol levels drop when I play his mother's voicemails." Ethel gripped her mentor's arm. "You realize what this means?" "It means," Clara said, slipping her stethoscope around her neck, "we've got exactly 8 hours to prove Jake Peterson is still home." The hospital boardroom felt colder than the morgue as Clara faced the panel. Harrison Peterson's lawyer tapped polished nails against the mahogany table where Jake's dear forms lay waiting. Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Mrs. Wilson, your unauthorized midnight examinations constitute medical necessity," Clara interrupted, her voice steady despite her thundering heart. She projected Jake's chart onto the screen. "These consistent physiological responses prove awareness." Harrison stood abruptly, his Rolex glinting. "My son is gone. His mother would be wanted his organs to save others." "His mother," Clara shot back, "would be wanted him to fight." She played the security footage, Jake's fingers twitching in rhythm to his mother's favorite hymn. The specialist Harrison had flown in, Dr. Lee, studied the footage intently. "These could be reflex movements," he began, but Clara was ready. She wheeled in a cart bearing an EEG machine. "Then let us test properly, right now." Dr. Reynolds objected. "This is highly irregular." "So is giving up on a child," Clara countered. She turned to Harrison. 30 minutes, that is all I ask." The millionaire hesitated, then nodded. As the electrodes attached, Clara leaned close to Jake. "Show them, sugar." The monitor lit up, sharp alpha waves flashing where there should have been flatlines. Dr. Lee gasped. "That is consciousness." "Impossible," Dr. Reynolds muttered, but Harrison was already weeping at his son's bedside. Clutching Jake's responsive hand, Clara slipped out unnoticed, her retirement badge heavy in her pocket. She'd won Jake his chance, but at what cost? The hospital corridor slept as Clara padded to Jake's room at 2:07 and the time his charts showed greatest responsiveness. Moonlight through vertical blinds striped the boy's face as she set up her makeshift rehab station, scented oils. A portable speaker playing his mother's favorite Patsy Cline records and her grandmother's embroidered prayer cloth. "Your mama loved the song, didn't she?" Clara whispered as Crazy began playing. When Jake's left pinky finger twitched in perfect rhythm, she nearly dropped her teacup. "That's it, darling. Now try opening those baby blues for me." Down the hall, Ethel stood guard, ready to divert any staff. They'd converted the private room into a rehabilitation suite after hours, cold compresses to stimulate nerve activity, gentle joint mobilization, and constant verbal encouragement. By 4 a.m., Jake was tracking objects with his eyes. By 5:15, he'd squeezed Clara's hand 3 times when asked how many siblings he had. She documented every response in her floral patterned notebook, tears splattering the pages. "Miss Clara," a hoarse whisper startled her. Jake's blue eyes, clouded for 6 months, focused clearly on her face. His dry lips formed the words again, "Miss Clara." The heart monitor shrieked as Ethel rushed in. "Sweet merciful heavens." The night nurse breathed. Clara cradled Jake's head as he struggled to speak again. His first words since the accident. "Mama would be proud of you." The women wept together at the bedside, their hands overlapping on Jake's no-gripping fingers. Outside the window, dawn painted the sky in hopeful pinks and golds, colors Clara hadn't noticed in years. 1 year later, Clara sat in Mercy General's spring garden, her silver hair gleaming under a new Kentucky Derby hat, Jake's extravagant thank you gift. The courtyard buzzed with reporters and medical staff gathered for what Dr. Lee now called the Miracle at Mercy presentation. Jake, leaning lightly on a cane, stepped to the podium with the easy confidence of a young man who'd cheated death. "They told my dad I'd never wake up," he began, his voice strong, but one stubborn nurse kept seeing me. Cameras flashed as Jake demonstrated his progress, walking unaided, reciting poetry, even winking at his blushing physical therapist. Dr. Reynolds sat stiffly in back, while Harrison Peterson wept openly in the front row. When Jake invited Clara to stand, the crowd erupted. She trembled as he presented her with a restored version of her original nursing license, revoked years ago after she'd blown the whistle on pharmaceutical kickbacks at her last hospital. "Mercy General is establishing the Clara Wilson Center for Coma Recovery," Jake announced, squeezing her hand. "Because sometimes," he paused, emotion thickening his voice, "sometimes hope is the best medicine." Later, as twilight fell, Clara wheeled an elderly dementia patient past Jake's old room. She paused to adjust the framed photo now hanging there, Jake in his football jersey, standing tall beside her wheelchair. The inscription read, "For the nurse who remembered I was still inside." Down the hall, a monitor alarm sounded. Without hesitation, Clara turned her chair toward the urgency, her hands steady once more, her heart full of stories yet to heal.